only on DAZN.
Which one did you say?
Well, look at this, socially distant.
Choose fine. No, I don't know.
This is starting right now.
So I think you're going to have about 20 minutes till Canelo will come. He is just doing his drug test and having a quick shower. So unfortunately you got me. You know I might struggle for 20 minutes, I'm a bit shy, but if you've got any questions, fire away. Sorry Mike, are you on the phone?
Ed, over here. Canelo said post-fight that he obviously is looking to unify. How easy or quickly could you get a fight made between him and Billy Joe?
Tonight?
Tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the big problem is when you talk about the revenue for any show is the lack of gate. I mean, tonight we were blessed to have 12,000 people here. It was so nice, wasn't it? I mean, it just felt like it was my first ever show that I went to as a kid. But we already had a deal in place for Billy Joe Saunders to fight Canelo Alvarez in May. And, you know, he's tweeted tonight, he wants the shot. You know, Canelo walked past me and said, that's 3, who's next? Because we've tried with Rocky Fielding, Daniel Jacobs and now Callum Smith, and we got 2 more, Billy Joe Saunders and Gennady Golovkin, that obviously are great fights. I think he loves the belts, he loves to face the champions. In fact, I think that's all he wants to do. You know, he wants to keep setting goals, winning belts, and I guess you'll hear from him soon.
But you know, he fights generally May and September, so are we looking at like a May or even sooner?
I don't know. I mean, I don't, know the schedule. I know that they want to fight regularly. You know, there was talks about him even fighting in Mexico in February, at the end of February, and getting the Yildirim fight out of the way, and then boxing in May and then September, and I think he said December, but he's obviously quite pumped at the moment and the adrenaline's rushing. Tomorrow he might wake up and think, I ain't fighting in February.
Yeah.
So, I think now my job is to keep him on DAZN, try and map out a schedule for him, and obviously the front 2 guys of his choice, I believe, are Billy Joe and Triple G.
So, Eddie, you said that your job is to keep him on DAZN. What do you think is the main ingredient that you need to keep him here?
I would think that one of the big words is trust, and I would like to think that after the relationship of only 5 weeks and the ease of the show that he's experienced this week and the work of our team, that he's very comfortable with what we've delivered. Money is probably, no, money before trust maybe, I don't know, it's close. I just think, I know he wants to make money, but I can only tell you what I've experienced from him and Eddie Reynoso over the last 5 or 6 weeks, which is a desire to create legacy and take challenges. Obviously commercially they want to be respected for that, but at the end of the day I think they like a plan. They want something mapped out, they want to see it and picture what the next moves are, and the next move is not just sometimes one fight, it's saying to me, okay, how does my 2021 look? And if they wanted a plan for that, we could come up with a plan and move forward with that.
One thing that really stood out to me is obviously, Canelo's the biggest star in sport, and for even his last 10 fights, maybe more, we've never seen this kind of atmosphere. The entrance, he had a Mexican mariachi band doing the final countdown. We had fireworks. How big is that?
Well, you can ask him when he comes. I mean, I just went to his change room, and it's the first thing he said to me. The entrance, man, can't believe it. And they were all looking at pictures, and that was quite low key for us, to be honest with you. I mean, that's something that we thrive on. Something that we've obviously developed over the years with Anthony Joshua. It's part of the show, and he clearly loved it. And I think sometimes, even small things like, we put out a post where I was just joking with him about his pajamas, right? And we conversed in English. And you could see people say, wow, oh, Canelo's talking English there, and people don't really realise he understands perfect English. You know, he does, but I think it's the confidence to speak it which is the difference. But he's a very likeable, cheeky, funny individual, and when you're promoting someone, you have to showcase their personality and their flamboyancy, and that's what that ring walk done. That ring walk said superstar, and that's what Canelo Alvarez is. So, you know, we were pleased with that, and I hope he enjoyed it. I think he did.
Can you tell us?
Eddie, how surprised were you
Hold on,
that...
hold on. Sorry, go on.
Sorry. Can you tell us about the transition after he separated from Golden Boy? You guys taking over. What was the process as far as, you know, obviously his training was, you know, quite rushed, but on the business side, how, I mean, walk us through that process.
Well, I think obviously when the announcement was made about the separation, it was kind of all guns blazing from the industry. You know, I guess PBC, Top Rank, us, everybody made their approach. I've been lucky enough to work with Eddie Reynoso and Julio Cesar Martinez, so I had a good relationship with them. I guess probably because of the history, the odds were stacked more against us because we were the broadcaster that essentially just ended a relationship with. They liked the plan, the money was important as well, and they liked the fight with Callum Smith, and it all progressed from there, you know. And touch wood, although like I said I was funking for our guy tonight, it's been faultless, you know. They've quite surprised me about the simplicity of the team in terms of ego, and you know, like this week we've had UK media who some are here who he's been giving time to, and I know it's a bubble, so obviously we're condensed in that respect, but I think he's enjoyed it, you know. I think essentially he's my boss, you know. If we work together, he is my boss, I work for him. It's the same as Anthony Joshua. You get to make your own moves, you get to make your own decisions, you get to do what you want to do, you know. But our job is to strategize, but you are the boss, and I think maybe that's something that he hasn't had before, or hasn't had that feeling before. He calls the shots, you know, and ultimately we will service him. We will help him in every department he needs to be helped in, and we will commercialise, you know, the brand of Canelo Alvarez in a different kind of way, which is and should be global, because I don't think, if you look at the draw of Anthony Joshua isn't a huge star in America yet, but Canelo Alvarez is a huge star in America, but maybe he doesn't have the global presence of Anthony Joshua yet, and that's because we've worked very hard on that over the last 5 or 6 years with some major commercial partners that have really, you know, helped his brand grow globally, and that would be the plan with Canelo Alvarez. I'd love to see him fight in London, I'd love to see him fight in Tokyo, I'd love to see him fight in the Middle East. You know, that's the sign of a true global star. But, you know, hands down, there is no bigger draw in boxing in America than Canelo Alvarez. You know, we've seen it from the numbers from DAZN tonight in America and on their new global product. You know, he's a huge draw, particularly in America, and it was a big win for them tonight to bounce back from the pandemic and regain a lot of those subscribers that weren't able to watch boxing when it was dark, essentially.
Does it make you nervous when you say, you know, he essentially is my boss? Do you think he could potentially turn into like a LeBron James?
Yeah, that would be the plan of any promotional company. I think we're a little bit different. We understand how to grow a fighter or a sports star's brand, and that's what Canelo Alvarez is. And something as simple as the walk-on, it's just iconic pictures and images that go worldwide, and people look at it and go, wow, who's this guy? You know, we've been doing it with AJ for years. He walks out in front of 90,000 at Wembley with, you know, the flaming AJ and the fireworks going off. I mean, the fireworks scared me tonight. I think they scared Canelo as well, but you know, those images are important, and he's, you know, he's the poster boy of boxing, really. You know, AJ and him, for me, the two global poster guys of boxing. So that's all part of the show.
And that he beat Callum as convincingly and as easily as he did.
I am surprised, and it just goes to show you how good he is, you know, and the levels of Canelo Alvarez. I mean, we're all boxing fans here, and so is Callum Smith, and so is Paul Smith and Stephen Smith and Liam Smith. And the amazing thing about both guys is when I went into Callum Smith's changing room, they were talking about the fight and the attributes of Canelo Alvarez and the tactics and, you know, and then when I went into Canelo Alvarez's changing room, him and Eddie Reynoso were going through the fight. You know, they were almost throwing punches, saying, yeah, I did this, and Callum said, yeah, he did this well. You know, and there is so much respect between fighters to Canelo Alvarez. You only have to look on the internet, and every fighter is saying, he is the best. He is pound for pound number one. I think that his movement, his jab, his body punching, I mean, I don't think Callum was badly hurt in the fight. He took a lot on his gloves and his arm. I mean, you saw his arm. But it looked to me that he was incredibly heavy-handed, Canelo Alvarez, from where I was sitting. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in the corral tonight. And, you know, his movement, Callum said he's so difficult to hit clean. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a jab or if it's a left hook. He rides the punches so well. He's always using his feet for pressure. And, you know, you saw the best 168 pounder in the world tonight, you know, lose pretty much every round to a guy who, you know, has come up from the divisions from welterweight, and it's going to take something, you know, a bit like with Lomachenko, where he had to almost go to a weight class really to get beat. You know, he's a featherweight, super featherweight, and with Canelo Alvarez, you know, he's a welterweight, probably a light middleweight who went to middle. Now he goes to super middle. You know, he could make 160, but you know, he has to take the big challenges. And you know, I saw some names like Bivol and Beterbiev, and you know, you'd have to go out completely outside of your weight class and comfort zone to beat Canelo Alvarez. You know, I mean, you saw the Golovkin, 2 tremendous fights, very, very close. Can Golovkin do that again? Can the movement of Billy Joe Saunders cause him enough problems? But you've got to hit him hard to keep him off. And, you know, Callum punches hard, but couldn't put a dent in him, really, at any time. And unfortunately, when you've got a fighter as good as that, who has a chin like that, makes it very difficult.
Callum's not going to make it to the press conference, right?
I don't believe so, no.
When you spoke to him in his dressing room, did he specify really what was wrong with his arm? He mentioned it in the ring, but he didn't really describe it all that much.
I saw it, I think, in the 11th round, because Canelo started looking at it and he was like pointing at it in the fight, because it was getting bigger and bigger. It's not diagnosed yet. Some people in the changing room think he might have broke his arm. And it would make sense, because he took a lot on it. I think it looks like a detached bicep or a tricep. I mean, he has a lump out the side of his arm, like, very strange. The doctor said it's a torn bicep or tricep, and he's going to have to get scanned when he gets home, but he's cleared to fly.
How early in the fight?
I think as early as the 2nd or 3rd round, but he's not, you know, he didn't for 1 second say, oh, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. I think he just got progressively worse, and the more shots he was taking on it, I think the more, you know, problems it was causing him. But, you know, he never finished the fight and said, oh, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. I think he's a very humble guy, and he just, you know, he held his hands up and said Canelo was too good.
Sorry, to clarify, you said the doctor said he has either a torn triceps or biceps?
I think they believe he has a torn bicep or detached bicep.
Or rupture, or?
I mean, until he gets scanned, I don't think they know. For me, it looks like a tricep, because it's actually out the back of the arm, and it's now out there. But some of the brothers think it could be broken because he can't move his arm at all. You know, and sometimes with a tricep or bicep, certain movements you can't do. But he can't move his arm at the moment, so I don't know.
So, you know, obviously you're talking about how Canelo and Joshua are the 2 biggest stars in the sport. Canelo right now is at a certain point. With you say can you mention and talk about how you're uniquely positioned to grow Canelo into a global star? Because he's talked a lot in the past about how important it is for him to fight in the Middle East, fight in Japan, fight in London. How far can he, like, how much bigger can he get than he already is now?
I mean, he doesn't need to fight anywhere else because of the draw that he is here. It's a bit like AJ. AJ doesn't need to leave London, but that's not the aim of someone who wants to become a global star or build a global brand. And actually, that's not someone who wants to push the boundaries and take challenges. I think, and I haven't spoken to him about it, but I think he wants to fight in Japan. He wants to fight in those territories. And we're the only promoters that do that. You know, we're the only promoters that promote globally. You know, whether it's Spain, Italy, America, UK, Middle East, Far East, you know, Eastern Europe. We promote everywhere in the world, and we have the contacts. You know, it'd be very easy for me to stage a fight for him in the Middle East. It would be very easy for me to stage a fight for him in Japan because he's a huge star. You know, it's not a case of going out there with your begging bowl. You know, when you go out and pitch Canelo Alvarez to a territory, they're going to be extremely keen for him to fight there. And you know, when he came to the Andy Ruiz Joshua fight in Saudi Arabia, and you know, it comes down to strategy. You know, and it comes down to what kind of relationship you have with a fighter. Do you have a 2-fight plan, a 1-fight plan? Do you have a 3-year plan? You know, and I think there is a 12-month plan for Canelo Alvarez that would see him boxing probably 3 different territories.
So in your ideal 12-month plan with these 3 different territories, can you kind of lay that out in your best vision?
Well, I think Japan, you know, there's been always talk about the Murata fight, you know, whether it's Gennady Golovkin or whether it's Canelo Alvarez. We all know that would be a monstrous fight in Tokyo. I would love to see him box in the UK. You know, he could box Billy Joe Saunders at Wembley. Who knows when we're going to get that kind of capacity back. He could box in America any day of the week. I'd like to see him box in Mexico, to be honest with you as well. So it comes down to, you know, as I said earlier, he is the boss. We will put opportunities in front of him. Listen, maybe he's done his fight with Matchroom and he goes and takes another fight. But I would like to think we could put a plan together to get him excited.
Eddie, tremendous event. I have to ask you this, did you talk to Earl Spence tonight, and what did you think of him coming to scout Canelo?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tremendous fight, you know, and Errol Spence is a big welterweight. The problem there is, I do think you'll see Errol move to 154, maybe in the next 12 months, but then, is he going to get to 160, and is Canelo, I mean, Canelo didn't request a rehydration clause with Callum Smith, not because he was concerned about what Callum Smith was going to weigh, probably because he didn't want to have to weigh in himself the next day. But you know, those kind of guys, when you have a star name, it's a bit like when Kell Brook jumped to middleweight to fight Gennady Golovkin. Sometimes you need to fight a name like that to make the payday that doesn't exist outside of your usual challenges. And for Errol Spence to fight Canelo Alvarez, it's the only way, in my opinion, he's going to make that kind of money. He's not going to fight. He's not going to make it against Terence Crawford because I don't think the fight's big enough. And by the way, I think he said tonight he wants 60-40 or 70-30. So obviously that fight's not even going to happen. So Errol Spence is an amazing fighter, you know. But it's going to take something to beat these kind of guys. You know, to beat Crawford, to beat Spence, to beat Canelo. You know, you're going to have to do something a little bit crazy. But if it's crazy, the money's got to make sense. I mean, and it was great to see him tonight, and great to see Teofimo Lopez. I mean, what a character he is. Fantastic for the sport.
His dad too?
Yeah, oh, great.
But Eddie, what makes Canelo so special from your perspective? There's a lot of amazing fighters in history currently. What do you see in him that makes him different?
As a fighter, I think the communication he has with Eddie Reynoso is quite special. I think when you have trust like that in your trainer, I think that's a very special gift, and I think that's a big string to your bow. I think his jab is spectacular. I think his movement is phenomenal. I think his shot selection is great. I think he has tremendous power. I think he has an incredible chin. I think he's really tough. And like great athletes, especially fighters, when you make that kind of money, yet you still have the desire to work as hard as you did when you first walked in the gym, and you still want to prove yourself, and you still want to take challenges, that's called being in love with the sport of boxing, and that makes you really dangerous. If you can stay at the top of the sport and not be doing it for the money, and you're as good as that, you can't be beaten. The minute you start falling out of love with it, the minute you start thinking about the money, the minute you're only doing it now because there's a huge payday, you become beatable. And to see, I see similarities in the mindset between him and Joshua, because when I go back to the change room after the fight, all they're doing is talking about the fight and what happened in this round and how they improved, and did you see it when I did this? And they're in love with the sport, you know, and they're both incredibly well fit, and it's a blessing they have, and that it's called competitors. That's what they are. They love to win. They're winners. And they're very difficult to beat when you still have that desire, because you should get softer, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
You know, you should all of a sudden say, I don't need to hang in there when it gets tough anymore. But they love it, and they're pure fights.
Thank you.
Ed, can you talk about Gallo Sonata and Chocolatito? That fight was announced today. Where will that fight take place?
So that fight, you have to have fans for that fight. You have to. So we were lucky to have 12,000 in here tonight. Managed to meet all the guys from the Alamo Dome. They've been absolutely brilliant, and we want to thank them. We want to thank the Texas Commission as well. I'd like to do it here, to be honest with you. I mean, 12,000 is a good number for that fight. We also had a tremendous crowd at the Danny Jacobs-Chavez fight last December in Phoenix. That was amazing. I've always wanted to promote a show at the old StubHub, the now Dignity Health. For me, that fight suits that venue down to the ground. But are we going to be allowed fans back in California in March? Maybe not. So the fight is set March 13th, and we'll work on the venue. But it must. You know, I mean, I've felt really lucky just to be able to do shows behind closed doors. But when you go to Gennadi's show last night and it's completely closed to fans, and then you come here and you remember what it's like to have energy in an arena, you do miss it badly. And you know, Gallo against Chocolatito is a fight that must have fans. So we'll announce the venue in due course.
Eddie, how do you think San Antonio is hosting this fight considering the obstacles of the pandemic?
I thought they've been tremendous. I mean, as a foreigner, you know cases are high all around the world. Cases are high in Texas, and I think the worry is you presume that cases are high because people don't take responsibility. But actually, I mean, the amount of times I got told to put my mask over my nose tonight, you know, it shows you that people are taking it very, very seriously. I think we doubled our spend on stewarding and security to try and maintain distancing in the arena, with the arena. It's very difficult to get it perfect every time. Last week we had only 1,000 people for the Anthony Joshua fight. Again, reminding people to wear masks, trying to keep people distanced. It's not easy, but I think the guys here did a tremendous job. The commission are tough but fair, and I think it's great for boxing. And actually, you know, whilst the most important thing is that anyone who comes into the arena is safe and everybody respects the rules, you are creating a new hub for boxing here in this state, because you've just had Gervonta Davis against Santa Cruz, you've just had Errol Spence against Danny Garcia, you've just had Canelo Alvarez against Callum Smith, you're about to have Ryan Garcia against Luke Campbell. We'll probably come back here with Gallo Estrada against Chocolatito. So this for now is the new home of big time boxing.
So until things change, this is the place to be.
I think so. As long as we can keep things safe for fans and customers, as long as we can respect the rules that are put in front of us, we'd certainly look to come back. You know, I think that there's two elements to it. There's the element of creating an atmosphere for your TV product, and there's the revenue that is required to make these big fights. And tonight we were lucky to have 12,000 people in, and that money could have been the difference between getting the deal over the line in the end. So at the moment, when we're looking at options to bring big fights, Texas, San Antonio, whether it's Houston, Dallas, you know, is the front runner for sure. And I think, you know, it's always been a great hub for boxing, particularly for Mexican fighters as well. But now it's a hub for all boxing, because it's one of the few states that are allowing us to safely bring back fans.
You know, you had, as you guys would call it, a cheeky interaction with Teofimo Lopez just a few minutes ago. And we're seeing, a lot of guys stepping up right now. Teofimo Lopez stepped up against Lomachenko. Ryan Garcia, you have him 2 weeks against Luke Campbell. What's the deal with Devin Haney? Are we going to see a big fight for him right out of the gate next?
Yeah, I mean, look, the fight between Luke Campbell and Ryan Garcia is a final eliminator for Devin Haney's WBC world title. So, I mean, I really have to respect Ryan Garcia for taking that fight, but if you're going to fight a final eliminator, you should really fight the champion after. I don't see the point in fighting a guy like Luke Campbell, who's a very good fighter, for the interim title and the mandatory position if you're not going to fight the champion. So I believe, and having spoken to Golden Boy and DAZN, that if Ryan Garcia wins that fight, he will fight Devin Haney next in April. I believe Luke Campbell wins that fight, and he will fight Devin Haney next in April. So for Devin Haney, I think it's really straightforward right now. It's the winner of January the 2nd. And they're both big fights. We all know Ryan Garcia against Devin Haney in the Staples Center is a monstrous fight. My favourite word at the moment. But also I'd like to see Devin Haney against Teofimo. These let's call them kids. These kids are great because they really will fight anyone. Like Teofimo would fight anyone. Devin Haney would fight anyone. Ryan Garcia would fight anyone. Tank Davis would fight anyone. We've just got to make sure we actually do the fight. So I don't mind which two are paired up of any of those four, as long as we see a few of them next year.
And I know you have more talks coming, right, for Joshua and Fury, probably Monday or tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean they've been ongoing non-stop. I mean the next move is really the drafting of agreements, which is going on right now. There's a lot of work to do on that, but only minor points really, in my opinion, to resolve. So I think you'll see over the next few weeks, hopefully us getting into that position where we can then go out into the marketplace and start to look at where that fight might take place. But again, as I've said before, no one is looking at any other fight from both teams other than that one.
So, you already had the financial split agreed to. You say there's only minor points to resolve. Do you basically have a verbal?
Yes. I mean, we have a verbal outside of, I'll tell you, where the fight's going to take place and how much money can be generated, but obviously there's a split for that. The TV platforms, we know AJ's got an exclusive deal with Sky, Fury's got matching rights with BT, in America Fury's exclusive with ESPN, AJ's got matching rights with DAZN, minor, again, and then the silly stuff, who walks first, who gets the best changing room.
Silly, but it's held up fights before.
Yeah, not when it's this big, in my opinion. They're still going to argue. I mean, AJ thinks he's the A side. Fury probably thinks he's the A side. But
who is the A side in your opinion?
Anthony Joshua.
Even removing yourself.
Anthony Joshua. I mean, when you talk about as a global brand and the biggest draw globally in that fight, it's clear. AJ he holds 3 of the belts. He's by far the biggest. This is why Tyson Fury couldn't fight in December, and AJ could.
Did we play a time frame for that fight yet?
Depends where it could take place. I mean, if it's going to be in the Middle East, Ramadan, I believe, runs till mid-May. So end of May, early June is the target for that fight. If he's going to be in the UK, May, June is great as well. But again, it depends on... The only way that fight can take place in the UK is if you can have 90,000 at Wembley. And even then, the guys are going to be taking 50% of the purse to an offer from another territory. But without a full stadium, which right now, with the UK going into another lockdown over Christmas, who knows? Who knows if we're going to see those kind of numbers, May, June of next year.
Hey Eddie, Ryan O'Hara, The Ring Magazine. Just wanted to get your thoughts on Canelo's victory in regards to that. Now he's made history once again. Coming into this fight, Henry Armstrong was the only fighter in history to hold multiple ring world championships at the same time in multiple weight classes, and now Canelo has joined a list of 2 fighters, him and Henry Armstrong. Your thoughts on that? At the end of Canelo's career, where do you think he's going to rank among the all-time greats?
I mean, I think that greats and legacy is only built over history. So when you watch a fighter in a current generation, when you were there as I unfortunately wasn't, but watching Leonard and Hagler and Hearns, did you feel that those guys at the time would go down as icons of the sport? But that happens over time, and Canelo is this generation's Leonard and Hagler and Hearns, and over the period of time, people will respect him even more for what he's achieved. And the fact that, like you said about only 2 men to do that, that's the kind of thing, having only known him for a limited period of time, that seems to be the kind of thing that motivates him. So when people call out names to fight Canelo Alvarez, I think there has to be a narrative to the fight to get him motivated for that fight. And I think maybe that's where the Triple G fight in the past, or maybe even now, whilst he understands it's probably the biggest financial fight for him, what is it? If it's at 168, it's a defence of his world super middleweight titles. If he fought Billy Joe Saunders, he was fighting another champion, trying to pick up another belt. So these are all things that you can ask him, but for me, he's the standout pound for pound at the moment in boxing. He's a modern day great, and as time goes on, that legacy will be established, and he will go down as, like I said, the great of our generation, I think.
Hey Eddie, welcome back to Texas, and Jeff Zimmerman from Fight News.
Yes, Jeff.
Hey, what is your relationship with Al Heyman and the PBC, and is Caleb Plant possibly back on the radar? There was talk about him and Canelo, a few months back.
Yeah, I think, the beauty of Canelo, I guess, being a free agent, gives him the ability to go and do things like that. If he was with us, he could do that as well, fight Caleb Plant, but he might not want to be. He might say, I'm going to do my own thing, and Eddie, if you can provide me with a fight against Golovkin or Billy Joe Saunders, great, or if not, I'll go over to Fox and I'll fight Caleb Plant. I believe Caleb Plant's fighting on January the 30th, so he would probably be around for Cinco de Mayo if he won that fight. And I guess if Canelo goes down the route of trying to be undisputed at 168, they're the 2 guys that he has to try and beat. So my relationship with Al Heyman is great. It all depends on really moving forward with Canelo. If I was a member of the team to negotiate that fight, or he might be quite happy just to do it on his own. So I think what he's doing is quite smart when you're the draw of Canelo Alvarez. It's a very risky model, not having a long-term deal and not having that security, but when you want to rise to challenges and sometimes rule out the politics of networks and other promoters, it does give you the freedom to take the fights you want to take.
Eddie, what's your thoughts on all the PBC guys like Plant, Charlo, Benavidez, Spence wanting to fight Canelo?
I think some of them are big fights. I think the Benavidez fight would be a big fight for obvious reasons. I don't think Canelo against Caleb Plant is that big here, and the Saunders fight is probably the same size in the US, maybe bigger in the US, but it has a bigger global appeal, particularly in the UK, which is of interest to the broadcasters. I just want to see. I think one of the beauties about any deal with DAZN, particularly with Canelo, would give him the freedom. I think they would allow, if he wanted to go and take another fight on another platform. I just think that's one of the problems with boxing, is that PBC particularly want to keep things in-house, and you only have to see their graphics. Even Errol Spence called them out about their graphics, not including Terence Crawford in who might be next. I think they put up 4 opponents. I think he's boxed 2 of them already. So you have to understand that boxing is about facing the best. Doesn't matter which promotional company they're with. Obviously, it's easier to make in-house fights, but everybody looks at Canelo Alvarez as the money fight. There's not a fighter at 160 pounds or 168 pounds that isn't saying, "Oh, I hope I get the call next," because it's your shot at greatness, and it's a pot of money. So everybody is in the hat.
Who's the hardest fight for Canelo in your opinion?
At 168.
Yes.
Well, I think if you look at the 2 Gennady Golovkin fights, you know, they're probably the toughest fights of Canelo's career so far. So I think that's a big challenge for him. I think Billy Joe Saunders is a tough fight. You know, if Billy Joe Saunders can get in the groove that we saw him in against David Lemieux, which was a fantastic performance, the groove that he was in against Andy Lee when he beat him, and it's going to take a challenge like that to bring the best out of Billy Joe Saunders. But listen, he may be unbeatable. He may be unbeatable. Like I said, you may have to go to 175 or maybe even bridge away, you know, to get beat.
Eddie, Edgar Berlanga tweeted out that he would have knocked out Callum Smith in the 6th round. He's got 16 first-round knockouts. What do you think about that tweet?
I mean, I think Edgar Berlanga's opposition is absolutely horrendous, to be honest with you. I mean, Edgar Berlanga may well be able to fight. He certainly carries power. But I think I was having a row with Coppinger the other day about it. I mean, the last guy he boxed was supposed to be durable. He just threw himself on the floor. I mean, maybe it was because of Berlanga's heavy hands. But my good friend Keith Connolly, who is Edgar Berlanga's manager, I said, you know, when are we going to see a step up? 16 first-round knockouts. I mean, you should be ready to fight for a world title after 16 fights. He's not boxed anyone in the top 40 of the world. So I think Edgar Berlanga, if he's going to show that he is a big threat in the division, needs to start fighting guys in the top 15. And by the way, I think he can really fight, and I think he's incredibly excited. But we can't get too excited when he's facing the level of opposition he is.
I have a very important question for you.
Oh dear.
So, production was awesome, great event. What in the world was that with the virtual Michael Buffer? That was so creepy, and then we also had David Diamante too.
So this is what happened, right? Michael Buffer was doing the ring walk virtually. It was all going okay. And then after Let's Get Ready to Rumble, when we got to the stage of introducing the fighters, the production didn't pipe it into the arena. So on TV, it was fine. You heard Michael Buffer actually intro the fighters. But in the arena, it was just quiet. So after 30 seconds, I just said, this is ridiculous. So I told David to get up, and he had to get into the ring. And then he announced it. So it worked in the arena, and it might have worked at home. I actually thought it was a bad idea. I just said we were just having a friendly joke with the zone. They actually quite liked it, but because it kind of worked in a weird way that on TV you heard Buffer, and in the arena you heard Diamante, but seamless it wasn't.
The zone quite liked it, and they had bigger problems.
Yeah, I think it come across okay on TV, but for me,
it was creepy.
Yeah, you're quite creepy sometimes.
Eddie, Mark Castro, for pro debut.
Yeah.
Usually pro debut, there's not a soul in the arena.
Yeah.
He's co-main, didn't show no fear, went and got the knockout. What did you think of how he handled it?
I think it was a big occasion for him. I mean, I changed his position. He was going to be the first TV fight, and when he showed me his outfit, I said, I'm going to actually put you just before the main event. And I think nerves got the better of him in the opening round or two, to be honest with you. I mean, he's a very confident kid. He might not admit that, but he did, you know, he didn't look very composed in the first round or two. When he started to settle down, when he started to, you know, set his feet, he's very, very good. Very, very good. But there's a lot more to come from Mark Castro, and there's a lot more to come from all our kids. I think Raymond Ford is a fantastic young talent. I mean, you see the benefit of sparring with the guys like Teofimo Lopez and Shakur Stevenson, and Ammo Williams is so exciting. You know, he's very, very heavy-handed. So Mark Castro is going to be a big star. I mean, there's a lot of people say he looks like Elon Musk.
He does.
You know, and I saw that, yeah, young Elon Musk. So hopefully he ends up making the same kind of money.
How does he debut co-main event? I mean, aside from the fact he did great on the fight, but
I just think that obviously we were very challenged in this show financially with no gate, or not the kind of gate that you'd expect for a normal Canelo Alvarez fight. So unfortunately we didn't have the budget for, you know, a show at MGM that generates another, I don't know, 7 million on the gate. So we saw Frank Sanchez and we saw some good fights, and I just felt that if we're going to invest in these young kids, this is the kind of platform that you need to give them the opportunity to do something different on. So a lot of people put young fighters out early, like Ellie said, with no one in the crowd. And I get a buzz out of watching a young man like that go out in front of 12,000 people. And like I said, I think he had jelly legs for the first round. So I wanted just to give him the chance and the platform that maybe others couldn't have got. And if we're going to build a star, that was the perfect way to get him off the starting line tonight.
Excuse me. Omar Perez Campos from Guadalajara. We know Canelo and Canelo team wants to fight in his city, but so big fights like Saunders or Golovkin are possible in Mexico or just in another country?
I think the only way that can happen is if there's investment from the government, because I don't believe the gate financially would generate the kind of money that you need to make a fight like that. So does that mean that maybe a smaller fight comes to Guadalajara, like a Yildirim fight or something, you know, in the interim? Again, my relationship with them has been quite brief, so I don't know the full mindset, but I do get the feeling that they would like to do something quickly in Guadalajara. And, you know, for me, that's the kind of thing that goes down in history. You know, when you talk about legacy, doing something in his home city would be amazing, would be incredibly special. So I think that that's really the next step for him, is to take challenges, not just in the ring, but out of the ring. You know, and that would include Europe or, you know, Tokyo, Guadalajara. So that's another question for him. You know, if he turned around to me and said, I'd like your help to do a show in Guadalajara, I mean, well, I'd go there tomorrow.
So, in your ideal plan for Canelo, which fight do you want to make it happen first, the Billy Joe Saunders or the Golovkin fight?
I think the Golovkin fight is the bigger fight globally. You know, bigger fight for DAZN. But you know, at the same time, I want to give Billy Joe Saunders a big fight. You know, he had that fight. We agreed that fight with Golden Boy. He actually flew out to Las Vegas to get ready and start training, and we were one day away from the announcement of that fight. So it kind of feels like a little bit of unfinished business there. Again, I think that's, you know, money doesn't seem to be the single motivator for Canelo Alvarez. I think he wants to fight the champions, and you know, but for me, the next fight in May anyway should be Billy Joe Saunders or Triple G. Anthony, do you have any updates?
I'll go ask you if you would come.
Yeah, I will go and get him.
Only on DAZN.